Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to this we'll do it live edition of Syracuse Sports. My name is Brent Axe. It is great to have you on board. We're on a lot of the channels today, a lot of the social media channels, football, lacrosse. Oh, yeah, it's happening, baby. Saturday at the Dome, of course, basketball fired up here. Our YouTube channel's fired up here. And, we're doing the thing. For those of you that are used to our live Syracuse football and basketball postgame shows, we figured we did the first one last week. We're going to keep doing it going forward. That we'll just kind of hang out here on Thursdays live and talk about what's on your mind when it comes to Syracuse sports. Now, today we're coming at you at about 2 o'clock Eastern time live. Some days we'll do it at 4. Maybe some days we'll do it in the evening. I sent a text to our Syracuse Sports Insiders, and being a Syracuse Sports Insider means you get direct text message access to me anytime, even at 1 in the morning, when we're talking Syracuse basketball, as we were just a few hours ago. Boy, it feels like we were just here, because we were 12 hours ago talking about a loss to Stanford after Syracuse got down 25-2 in the first half. So being a Syracuse Sports Insider means you can text me anytime. Your thoughts, your opinions, your questions, your comments on all matters Syracuse sports. You get all sorts of information, opinion, analysis from me. And if I breaking news, you get it first. I mean, the community we are building is amazing, and we'd love for you to join it. The information is there on your screen. JoinSubtext.com/Syracuse Sports to become a part of our Syracuse Sports Insider community. It's just $3.99 a month. You can try it free for 2 weeks and see what it's all about, right? So we were talking hoops here on these channels, and what we want to do on Thursdays, just hang out live and talk about some things on your mind. So I got a few things I want to discuss today. One is the serious buzz that Kyle McCord, LeQuint Allen, Fadil Diggs, Jackson Meeks, you name it, these Syracuse guys are getting some serious buzz in both Dallas at the Shrine Bowl and in Mobile at the Senior Bowl as well. So we'll get into that a little bit. Significant news out there today that the ACC has renewed its deal with ESPN. Reporting out there from David Hale, Andrea Adelson, Ross Dellinger, a lot of college sports insiders. What that means, particularly what it means for Syracuse, and are they just kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit here on Florida State, Clemson, belly aching, suing, trying to get out of the league? I think they've appeased them for now, but there's some key things in that we'll go over. Basketball, I want to circle back on something that John Wildhack said about basketball a while ago and some lingering thoughts on last night's loss as well, particularly what can they do about these slow starts? And I think my answer might surprise you about what they can do about these slow starts. And as noted, lacrosse starts Saturday. Syracuse, Jacksonville, high noon at the Dome. Former West Genesee and Syracuse star John Galloway, who I talked to this week. That story's up on syracuse.com. Hope you guys can check that out. It's going to bring his Jacksonville Dolphins into the Dome. I think this could be a pretty good game. Jacksonville hasn't quite got over the hump, got into the NCAA tournament quite yet, but they could give Syracuse a little bit of a push here, especially early in the season. But man, this Syracuse team, the expectations are high. It feels like old school Syracuse lacrosse where people are booking hotels. I'm not saying to do that, by the way, but hey, listen. It used to be just standard. You'd find where the Final Four was. You'd book a hotel, and Syracuse would be there. Memorial Day weekend for years. They haven't been there since 2013. They have not won the national championship since 2009. But this is certainly a roster that is capable of making those runs. So we'll talk a little Syracuse lacrosse. A couple of stats that I think are key if Syracuse is going to keep rising as they have steadily under Gary Gait. But let's start with football, and it has been incredible this week. So, look, whatever happens tonight, remember, tonight is the Shrine Bowl. So you're going to have Kyle McCord. You're going to have Fadil Diggs. You're going to have Alijah Clark. You're going to have Jackson Meeks. And I'm forgetting one that's out there in Dallas with those guys. It'll pop back in my head here shortly here. But you have 5 Syracuse guys, Oronde Gadsden, of course, that are going to play in this game. If they get some highlights out of the Shrine Bowl, great. But the thing with the Shrine Bowl and the thing with the Senior Bowl is it's much more about the practices during the week, the process during the week, the interviews. You've got NFL GMs, scouts, all the head coaches are in Mobile, and they are more interested in that process, in those interviews, and those one-on-one interactions, and who looks good in practice, and those individual skills that they're starting to really analyze. They've got all the game film in the world on these guys. It's those interactions and starting to really form personal opinions on these players before they get into the workout cycle, before the combine starts in a couple of weeks, right? So whatever happens in the Shrine Bowl, whatever happens in the Senior Bowl, I'm not discounting that, but the most important process of these things has already happened. And the buzz that has been building about these Syracuse guys has been incredible. I saw one today that I just want to pop on the screen here. Jordan Reed is one of the best guys that covers the NFL draft. He's now at ESPN, and he said this today about LeQuint Allen. In a deep class, Syracuse running back LeQuint Allen is a name to circle. He's been phenomenal over the past 2 days. Great receiver, capable of a diverse route tree out of the backfield, good feet and vision, showed his physicality as a pass protector today. I love that good, meaty football talk, right? But LeQuint Allen is showing out at the Senior Bowl, and what Jordan nailed there and is going to be LeQuint's ticket to the NFL is his versatility. He's one of the most versatile backs in what is a deep running back class, as he noted. And LeQuint, see, this is what people are going to find out being in Mobile and at the combine and in these workouts and interviews, how hungry he is. All those things that Fran Brown can tell these coaches, but they have to figure this stuff out on their own. And LeQuint, the way he plays, how hard he goes, how hungry he is, but that versatility, that pass catching ability, along with Cam Scatabo from Arizona State, one of the best prospects in the draft at this. Mel Kiper Jr. has been very high on him, so LeQuint's getting some serious buzz. I've seen, now you got to be careful who you retweet and who you put your credibility in. There's a lot of grifters. There's a lot of fake, phony NFL draft analysis out there, people that are stealing other people's analysis and just putting it out there as their own. So you have to go with the credible guys, Jordan Reed, Mel Kiper Jr., Field Yates, Chad Reiter from CBS. Like, I could go on and on here. Certainly, there's a few more names that will pop in mind here. You guys know who you put your credibility into. Just be careful who you're retweeting out there. There's a lot of people that steal other people's work and claim it as their own, right? But the good, solid NFL draft guys that put in the work and know what they're doing here. Kyle McCord made the all-practice team out of the Shrine Bowl, as did OG. And, yeah, don't go Allen Iverson on me here. We're talking about practice? Remember, the practice, the process, the week, what these scouts and NFL people see during the week is more important than what happens in the game itself. Again, Kyle McCord goes out there and chucks a 75-yard touchdown pass to Jackson Meeks. Hey, great highlight. That'll get shared on social media, and it'll reiterate, it'll emphasize what these guys are already thinking and what they already know. But Syracuse, the last time they had 4 guys taken in an NFL draft was 2006. The last time they had 3 guys taken in an individual draft was 2013. It appears to be on track that they're going to break that mark. Kyle McCord is absolutely going to get drafted. LeQuint Allen is absolutely going to get drafted. So is OG, right? I think Jackson Meeks is going to get picked. I think Fadil Diggs is going to get picked. I think Alijah Clark's going to get picked. And I'm pretty sure Justin Barron could be a late round selection as well. Now, let's say we're wrong about 1 or 2 of those guys, and they end up being free agent signees. That's a solid 4 or 5 guys from Syracuse that will be selected. That is the best recruiting tool that Fran Brown has to bring in elite talent. I understand how important that NIL is, but you can give somebody NIL money to come to Syracuse for the purposes of coming to Syracuse. That's not an NFL talent. And I'm going to give you an example of that from basketball. Eddie Lampkin. Eddie Lampkin's not an NBA talent. It's not. But you had to pay Eddie Lampkin to fill a role in basketball, which I think he's doing very well, right? High-level college guy that you had to fill a position in. He was one of the highest-rated guys in the portal. You paid him the money that you had to pay him. You got him in. He's not an NBA prospect, right? So that's why NIL, and I want to say it's overrated, it's important, but the best marketing tool is those 3 days this year in Green Bay where you just see Syracuse scroll across the screen, and you can tell these players that you're recruiting, especially the high-level guys, that actually have a path to the National Football League, that Syracuse can send you there, that they have the platform, they have the coaching, they have all that you need to go on that path to the National Football League. I want to read you this, too. You can listen to the pod to get the full context of this, but I was listening to, I believe it's called First Draft today, Field Yates and Mel Kiper Jr., and boy, they love Oronde Gadsden. Now, in a previous episode, Kiper was all over LeQuint Allen and loves him. But here's what he said about OG. The ability to get contested catches goes his way, 50-50s. Bottom line is this kid each week in the ACC did a heck of a job. Solid H-back. I don't do a very good Mel Kiper Jr. impression. Maybe I'll try. Be able to move him all around, all over the field. Give this guy matchup advantages. If he's covered, he's open. He's dynamic after the catch. Mel talks very fast. The notes I have on him to go on. This is Kiper. Consistently secure grabs and tight coverage, body control, adept at finding open areas. They note his father, of course, Oronde Gadsden, who played in the NFL. He's bigger than his dad. I think he could be a fear factor player in the National Football League. I love this kid. So they love him. And one thing that Field and Kiper talked about on their pod is pretty interesting, saying Syracuse has got a lot of guys. They got guys that are going to get drafted. Fran Brown has done a heck of a job there at Syracuse. I'll predict this. This is Kiper. Fran Brown will be an NFL coach down the road. That's just me. Field responds and says, I could totally see it, Mel. I hope it's not for a while for Syracuse's sake. He's done an amazing job, and it was fast. There was no transition period, no ramp up, right into it. So what we're seeing, guys, here is the most buzzworthy NFL draft conversation around Syracuse guys that we've seen in a while. It's not one or two, it's 4 or 5, maybe even 6 or 7 guys that will either get drafted or will be in the conversation. Certainly, if a few of those names don't get picked, they're going to be free agent signees, and that is the best recruiting tool that Fran Brown has in his back pocket. So Shrine Bowl tonight, we'll see how McCord and company do. The Senior Bowl is Saturday. LeQuint Allen and Justin Barron in that one. Now, this has a lot to do with football, but to go on to our next topic here. So I would encourage you to read these stories. David Hale, Andrea Adelson on ESPN, Ross Dellinger from Yahoo, some of the best college football insiders out there. So I think a lot of you guys know the deal in the last couple of years. Florida State, Clemson, not happy with the uneven television distribution. The SEC and the Big Ten have their media deals have soared. The ACC is in, I think they're in 4th place now, actually, behind the Big 12. They're just not getting the year in, year out, and I keep saying TV, it's really media rights. The media rights deals that the SEC and the Big Ten are getting. We're talking over 40, 45, $50 million a year per school, right? Where the ACC is more in the 20, 25, $30 million range. So Florida State and Clemson have been belly aching about this. They've sued the ACC because the ACC has what's called a grant of rights until 2036 that it's so expensive to try and buy your way out of the league that you can't do it. The fees, if you will, the fines to get out of the ACC to try and go to another league are, and it was smartly written in there in 2016 when they did this deal, are so exorbitant that nobody's even trying. So what do we do in America when we don't like something? We sue. We try to get out of it, right? This is the reporting today. I would encourage you to read the whole story, but here's kind of the cliff notes of what you need to know. So just bear with me for a second here. Story time with Uncle Brent, as David Hale and Andrea Adelson write. Multiple athletic directors tell ESPN this could involve using the ACC's relationship with Notre Dame to strategically create more games against the conference's top-tier teams. Earlier this month, Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bevawakwa said he was open to playing more games against Clemson in the future. Notre Dame currently plays 5 to 6 regular season games against the ACC annually and is a member of the ACC in all other sports. Of course, Syracuse goes to South Bend this season. The story goes on to say this. Negotiations surrounding the option ran in conjunction with discussions between the ACC, Clemson, and Florida State. Here we go. Money quote, literally. On a new revenue distribution model aimed at alleviating the school's biggest concerns over financial disparities with peers in the Big Ten and the SEC, both of which have more generous TV contracts signed over the past 2 years. Under the proposed plan, a percentage of the ACC's television revenue would be included in what's called a brand fund, and that money would then be distributed to schools that annually generate the most revenue for the conference in football and men's and women's basketball, with Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and North Carolina likely at the top of the pyramid. So you're appeasing the top four schools that would be the first to bolt to a Big Ten or an SEC, should the Big Ten or the SEC want them. I wouldn't count the Big 12 out of that, too. It's been pretty aggressive and would take any of those schools if they wanted to go. So my impressions on this here, the rich get richer. They're trying to appease and give that brand value to the schools that generate the most revenue and generate the most television ratings and generate just the most interest in the league. So that shows you that the ACC's got to keep pace. This year they had Clemson, SMU, and Miami in the playoff discussion. Notre Dame doesn't really count as an ACC team, though they play 5 or 6 ACC teams a year. Syracuse, had they lost 2 games instead of 3, they'd be in the college football playoff. So you need that. You need basketball to get better, though basketball's not as important in this discussion, but you can't have the so-called best college basketball league in the country only getting 4 or 5 teams in the NCAA tournament. And Syracuse is a big part of that, as we'll get into in a minute here with hoops and to circle back on something that John Wildhack said a while ago. But certainly basketball has to hold up their end of the bargain here. The SEC is the best college basketball league now. Why? Because they bought everybody. Because they have the NIL cash that even the mighty ACC does not have. That Duke, North Carolina, the blue bloods in the ACC can't compete with at this point. That's a big factor in this, but I want to read you one more line from this, and it's interesting because it was the last line in the story, and it's one of the more important things in this whole thing. As part of the settlement, Clemson and Florida State were asking the ACC to agree to reduce penalties for exiting the grant of rights after 2031, when TV contracts for the Big Ten, SEC, and Big 12 are set to expire. Yeah, ding, 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 ding. See what I mean by kicking a can down the road here? Because this contract between the ACC and ESPN was set to expire in 2027. They had to. Every time I say that word, by the way, I think of that commercial. Expired, expired, expired. Thanks, Aunt Bonnie. Anyway, side thought. But it was going to expire in 2027, so they had to renew it. So they kicked the can down the road from 2027 to 2031. Not 2036 when the grant of rights is over. Clemson and Florida State asked for less penalties to get out of the league in 2031 when all the other power leagues renegotiate their deals. That's key, and they're going to get it, by the way. Okay, so you appease the big boys. From a Syracuse perspective, there's nothing they can do. They're just along for the ride. As much as Syracuse Chancellor Ken Severud has tried to get more involved in this conversation, they proposed kind of an alternate league that they want to form. The SEC and the Big Ten are not on board with that, so it's not happening. It's DOA. It is dead on arrival, okay? Syracuse is at the whim of the big boys. Syracuse has no say in this. As much as John Wildhack was a big-time executive at ESPN, literally wrote some of those contracts that they're dealing with, Syracuse is not a power player here. If Syracuse declared its independence today, could they end up in a Big Ten? Maybe, but it's all on what Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and North Carolina want to do. I would put Virginia in there too. They're actually a pretty desired market that the SEC and the Big Ten would, or the Big 12 would swoop in on, that they're not in now. Something to keep in mind there. So it is good news, because it's going to take some of the anxiety about these teams trying to leave and just boot it down the road a few more years while the ACC tries to stabilize itself. Now, here's something I want to bring to the table. If I'm Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, one of the reasons they're doing this is to make programming on the ACC network, frankly, more attractive with bigger matchups. How much is Jim Phillips out there courting some of that big-time streaming money, right? What is ESPN going to be in 2031? What is the media landscape going to look like next year, let alone in 2031? Or 2036? It's 11 years from now. I mean, come on. Think of how rapidly the media landscape has changed. So is Jim Phillips talking to Amazon? Is he talking to Netflix? Is he talking to Hulu? I mean, put whoever you want in that conversation. They're making major investments in live sports. Netflix in particular, okay? Amazon made a huge investment in the NBA. Are you talking to the wrong people here? Because trying to make better programming for the ACC network and trying to shore up this deal that was made in 2016 when TV networks mattered is, to me, pretty old school thinking here. Would it be better for Phillips to shore up this deal and kick the can down the road? I certainly understand that. And look, you have to deal with ESPN. I'm not saying you abandon ESPN. Like, they're not going anywhere, and neither is Fox for that matter. But can you innovate and get Amazon to buy an ACC package or Netflix or whoever? So a streamer that's got an audience and has got money, and it's a pretty short list of people. I don't know if I'd put Peacock on that list, but they've got a considerable number of subscribers. So just something to think about here, right? What exactly are they dealing with in terms of their media deals? And do you have somebody that will innovate and think forward? And I don't know what the media landscape is going to look like a month from now, let alone in 2031, but just something to think about. Like, I read that in that story, that they're trying to create essentially sexier matchups for the ACC network. And I'm like, I love the ACC network. I go on the ACC network a lot. It's a great channel, and it's necessary to put a lot of the games that don't end up on ESPN or ESPN2 on, and it's accessible to a lot of people. And I love the ACC network, don't get me wrong, but you better start thinking about some other things. You better start thinking about some streamers that got some money, and that could be a way to make up from what you're not getting from the SEC. And I know there's contracts out there. I know you have media deals with ESPN, and the lawyers can sort through all that, but it's going to be fascinating to see just what exactly the media landscape they're dealing with looks like when that contract gets up. But good news, short-term stability in terms of how this is going to go long-term. It's going to be fascinating to watch, especially with the structure of college sports today, NIL money and everything. And I don't know how they're going to keep paying these people out. There's only so much you can do from that media right money that comes in, that gets distributed, and then you still have to pay athletes, and you've got the house settlement coming up. It's going to be fascinating, to say the least. But go read up on those stories. That was an interesting and significant note that came out today. All right, basketball. We talked a lot about it on the postgame show. So if you missed that, that's if you subscribe to Syracuse Sports, which you should, by the way, on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, you can check out our postgame show done late into the night or early this morning, depending on how you look at it. You can't fall behind 25-2 and win a basketball game. Did Syracuse put up the good fight and make it a game, and we're down by 6 late, and maybe we're threatening to pull off one of the best comebacks that they've ever done? Sure, you can say that. But this team chronically starts slow. The energy is not there. The confusion is there. This team is never ready to play. And what's the solution to that? Autry has already flipped the lineup a bunch, but he might have to flip it again. And I didn't think I'd be the one saying this, because I think he's generally better off the bench. But do you think about putting Jaquan Carlos back in the starting lineup? And I know some of you are groaning about that. I like Jaquan generally. Look, he had 16 points last night. Hit a couple of threes, 6 for 6 from the field. He brought, and even said after the game to Kyle Cuff, that they had to bring the energy. They had to spark Syracuse. They had to get them back into this thing based on their slow start. Carlos led this team with 16 points last night. Carlos has his flaws, particularly on defense, but JJ had a bad game last night. JJ Starling, 3 of 16. JJ's better off the ball. JJ can run the point. JJ should run the point at times, but he's better off the ball. So you may have to flip back to either putting Carlos back in the starting lineup, my man Kyle Cuff, who had a decent spark off the bench last night, 6 points. He only played 8 minutes, though, because you're in a spot now, because you have Alijah Moore in that starting lineup. Alijah Moore played 5 minutes last night, which you also, as I mentioned on the postgame show last night, but it bears repeating, you got to start thinking about, how do you balance the minutes? He has the title as a starter, but the portal beckons. And if I'm Alijah Moore and I don't know what my role is, and I'm getting pulled and I'm only playing 5 minutes, now he deserved not to play more than that, because he's struggling out there, particularly on defense. You can't put a guy out there that's not bringing anything to the table, right? You can't just give him minutes to appease him. But we're in the portal era now, and you've got to think about what you tell a kid, because they've got leverage. Because if they don't like what they're hearing, they're going to go in the portal, right? but he's also not producing. And I'm surprised he's not producing. This is the time of year when freshmen become sophomores. And with Donnie Freeman still out, and I'm starting to doubt if we're going to see him at all the rest of the year. What's that, 8 games he's missed now, day to day? With that foot injury, he's got to start thinking about his future and his NBA draft prospects and whether he's going into the portal, whether he needs, I'm not a doctor, I just play one on a podcast, but does he need surgery on that foot? I don't know. But I think the answer might be you probably got to put Carlos back in the lineup or put Cuff in the starting lineup and try and shake up that backcourt, and maybe Elijah Moore is just better off the bench again because he's not producing. He is, just look at the numbers, game by game, and I hate to say it because I want to see him progress. I think he's going to be a great player, but when you look at the production, when you look at the numbers, it's just not there. One thing, too, and I mentioned this on the post-game show, but it bears repeating, when it comes to slow starts for this team, let me pull it up here. So Syracuse has trailed at the first TV timeout's the under 16 timeout, right? They have trailed in their 12 losses. They've trailed at the under 18 9 times. 9 out of 12 losses, they've trailed at the under 16. They've trailed a total of 16 times at the under 16 mark. This team, the identity of Syracuse basketball this year, of all the things, you want to know what the orange standard is? They're never ready to play. The first half matters. You can't keep digging yourself these holes and expect to crawl out of them. It's great that they made it a game. Frankly, Stanford went ice cold for the last 10 minutes of the first half. Some of that was a credit to Syracuse's adjustments and their defense, but it's a simple, I say it's a simple solution. We know what the problem is. They just don't figure it out. They have to move. They don't move on offense. They don't move on defense. That's energy. That's will. That's leadership. That's coaching. That's everything. But if you are not ready to play that often, that's coaching. Whatever you're doing in practice, whatever game plan you're putting together is not translating to, especially on the road. And I get this was at Stanford, but guys, this happens at the Dome. You know, when they have to walk to the game as opposed to flying across the country to play a team in an ACC regular season game in Palo Alto. Yeah, that makes sense, but welcome to college sports in 2025. So I think that might be the answer. I don't know. You got Cal on Saturday. Oh, by the way, Malik Brown looks to be back in the flow for Duke. He's been practicing. He's probably going to play against North Carolina on Saturday and likely could be in the lineup. We'll see how his progress goes, how his conditioning is, but looks like Malik Brown will be available for his little reunion in the Dome come Wednesday night when Duke and Cooper Flagg and company come in. How about Maxime Reynaud last night? If you weren't familiar with him, you're like, who's this guy? Dropping 21 and 15. Best player in the league. Player of the year in the league. Cooper Flagg is going to be the number 1 pick, and that's great. And I can't wait to watch him on Wednesday because I love to watch great players and talent that comes to the Dome that you can say, I saw him when he was at Duke, right? Think of all the guys through the years we've seen. I'm excited about that, but Maxime Reynaud, hell of a player, hell of a game, and he was fun to watch. He was worth staying up for last night. All right, so while we're on the basketball subject, and I have it here, just give me a sec to find it. So, look, I want to be fair about this. This interview was a few years ago. The world has drastically changed. NIL was nowhere near what it was, and I get that things evolve and they change. But as the great Dickie Dunn said in Slapshot, I'm just trying to capture the spirit of the thing, Reg. The spirit of what John Wildhack says here still is true. So this is a Q&A that my friend and colleague Chris Carlson did with Wildhack a few years ago. And he asked this question. Do you worry that if this lingers, the reputation that Syracuse is a top-tier program dissipates, and Syracuse becomes viewed as an average program that can occasionally surprise you? This was Wildhack's answer. Quote, I don't think so. If you're in the tournament, you're pretty darn good in my opinion. You go 4 or 5 years and you don't make the tournament, now you're average and maybe below average. Hey, guess what? We're here. That comment that you made a few years ago is who you are. You are average, or in your words, maybe below average. Now, again, I want to be fair. no NIL, world was different when he did this interview. But the spirit of what he said there absolutely applies. No matter what the structure is of college sports, and particularly college basketball, you don't make the tournament, that's the standard bearer, especially in Syracuse, New York. 4 straight years without the NCAA tournament, which is what this team is barreling towards right now. That's an eternity, and something that has not happened in Syracuse since the 1960s, okay? So it's one thing for me to say it. It's one thing for the fans to say it, and I did find it interesting, coincidentally, how many of you CC'd me on some emails that you sent to Wildhack. There's some fans that are going right to the top and expressing their displeasure with what's going on right now. But those words have come to fruition. If you're in the tournament, you're pretty darn good, in my opinion. You go 4 or 5 years and you don't make the tournament, now you're average and maybe below average. Those are the words of your athletic director, and that is exactly true. That's who you are now. And just puts so much pressure on next season. On Sadiq White, on Kiyan Anthony. I'm going to put Luke Fennell in there, the Australian import, who's playing really well, and I think could be a real surprise for people. I mean, he's completely off the radar being, oh, they're in Australia, mate, but that's a good recruiting class you're bringing in. But you're putting a lot of pressure on them to kind of rescue this thing, whatever the team looks like next year in the portal. They are going to be playing for Autry's job because he'll be back. For those of you that want to see a change made and want to ramp up that conversation, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's not going to happen. Even though Wildhack's own words that we just put up there, you are an average to below average program by your standard. You want to know what the orange standard is? You haven't made the tournament for 4. Next year would be 5 years. We're here. Hello, we're here. Guess what? We're living in the future. None of this has happened yet. Actually, it has. It's happening now. So I thought that was interesting. Okay. One last thing before we go, kids. Are you ready for some lacrosse? I am ready for some lacrosse. I'm a huge fan of the sport. I played the sport here in Central New York. I'm not going to tell you my Ryan Powell story once again. That's my Al Bundy story of how Uncle Brent was the co-MVP with Ryan Powell in an all-star game back in the day, but I won't bore you with that story. But I love the sport. And, guys, this team's good. I don't want to overhype them. I don't want to put too much pressure on them, but this is what their expectation is anyway. So I'm not telling tales out of school here. They would tell you the same thing. As a matter of fact, if you don't want to take my word for it here, I asked Joey Spallina the expectations this program has and what they're thinking about this season. Spallina, the 3rd leading scorer in the country last year, number 1 overall recruit a couple of years ago, one of the best players in college lacrosse. Here's
we set the expectation, championship weekend, like it's been, since, Coach Skate was here, and I think we're trying to bring that mindset, and just trying to bring that, that playing style back, whether it's, I'd say our man up right now, 5 out of our 6 guys have, have legitimately played like big time box lacrosse, and I wish you guys could see some of the goals that we're scoring. They're actually they're unbelievable. So I think we're just trying to get back to the way that the old Cuse was, and it's Final Four.
There you go. It's Joey Spallina. So they expect it. They know it. They're going to do all the sports cliches. They're going to take it 1 week at a time. They're going to go 1-0 this week and all that stuff. But this is a team with his experience, Spallina, Hiltz, Finn Thompson, Michael Leo, I'm going to leave some names out here, but Jackson Birtwistle, some new talent up and coming, notably Trey Deer is a guy to watch on attack this year. On defense, you got Cole, you got Billy Dwan, you got Nick Kakemo. They have to settle their goalie situation. I think both will play. I'm actually going to go talk to Gary Gate and the SU lacrosse players after we get off this pod, and I think Gary will have an update for us on what their goalie situation is going to be. I anticipate Jimmy McCool is going to win out, and from what I've been told, and some people that have been in practice, they're going to be fine, whoever wins the goalie job. Will Mark, I think, did an excellent job the past couple of years. Jimmy McCool might be better than Will Mark. So I think they'll be fine there. But there's 2 stats in particular, and I didn't unearth some crazy hidden stat here, but these are 2 things that Syracuse has to maintain in order to be a national championship contender. Now, in the business world, when you have a great quarter and you meet with your boss and they're like, that is great. Okay, next quarter, let's up that by 10%. They're always looking for more, right? It's not, hey, you're doing a good job. Just keep doing what you're doing, right? No, they always got to bump it up a little bit, right? Now let's get 10% more. I'm gonna cut Syracuse some slack here because they literally can't improve on these numbers. Two numbers. Last year, Syracuse led the country, winning 304 faceoffs. Could you win more than that? I'm not going to doubt you, but I'm not going to expect you to win more than that. What I am going to expect is for you to maintain that level. John Mullen, in what was a brilliant move by Gary Gate last year, kind of slowly passed the baton to him as a freshman, while Mason Cone, graduate senior from the portal they brought in, rescued Syracuse at the faceoff X. Remember, in the years prior, faceoffs were a major issue at Syracuse. That problem's been solved. Just maintain. I'm not saying you even have to lead the country again, but you got to be top 3, right? And I think they have the personnel to do it. John Mullen is terrific, okay? Syracuse scored 265 goals last year. That led the country. To hear what Joey Spallina just said and some other players that I've talked to and that talent and that experience that is back, the only problem is there's just one ball, right? And you just have to feed everybody on that offense. 265 goals, they could top that this year, but all I'm saying is maintain. Just maintain. Just be in that area. Specifically, by the way, you heard Joey mention it. They led the country in man-up goals last year, 28. Syracuse was put on the man-up more than anybody in the country last year. Look, it's a different season. You can't just expect everything to carry over from the year prior. But I'm not even telling you to be better. I'm just telling you to be just as good as you were last year, and you'll be fine in those areas. So, guys, this team's loaded. It's experienced. They have one of the more experienced rosters in college lacrosse, number 2 in the Inside Lacrosse media poll, number 3 in the coaches poll. And it's fair, by the way, that depending on how you look at it, it's pretty razor thin between these two. You can either put Cornell or Syracuse number 2. Notre Dame's the clear number 1. They're the back-to-back defending national champion. They still have a Kavanaugh on the roster. They're, the old Ric Flair line. You want to be the man, you got to beat the man. So until somebody beats Notre Dame and knocks them off the perch, fair. Totally fair. The 2 spot is either Syracuse or Cornell. Cornell's got the best attack in college lacrosse. C.J. Kirsten and company, loaded. Syracuse is right behind them. I would put them very, very close with their attack, especially with all the guys they can kind of circulate on attack. But it is fair to once again expect Syracuse to make the Final Four. And I get everything that happens during a season, the ups and the downs and the injuries and just the unforeseen things that can come along. But for the first time in a long time, we're not just saying we expect Syracuse to make the Final Four in lacrosse, because that's just what we always say, because that's what this, what history says. No, this roster, this team, the talent that's on it can expect to be that good, because they are. Jacksonville on Saturday. How cool is this, by the way, that John Galloway gets to bring Jacksonville in, the former West Genesee and Syracuse star. Look, Jacksonville, also one of the top scoring teams in the country last year, also one of the top face-off teams in the country. They have to replace their Fogo, which Syracuse does not. But they've got 3 of their top 5 scorers back. They've got a terrific goalie who returns, who was top 10 in the country last year in save percentage. Galloway's got a squad. They were one game. So they're in the ASUN. Very hard for Jacksonville to get an at-large bid. They lost in the conference title game to Utah. Utah's actually built a hell of a program in just 7 or 8 years. Syracuse goes to Utah later this year. So they're in a tough league. But Galloway, I think, has a team that's fully capable of not only making the NCAA tournament this year, but they're going to give Syracuse a game, especially early in the year. Everybody's still kind of getting their sea legs here, and like Syracuse practices indoors, and they have the advantage of the dome. They kind of can come out of the gate a little faster than a lot of teams. But Jacksonville's going to make this a game. This is not going to be some of the early season blowouts that we've seen in game 1 for Syracuse. This is a nice test to get the season going. And what I think will end up in Foxborough. I'm not telling you to book a hotel in Foxborough Memorial Day weekend, but I'm not telling you to do that either. Okay? Final Four for Syracuse. That is my prediction. They are that good. Who else will be there with them? I mean, Notre Dame will be back. I think Cornell will be there. Princeton's really good. I mean, there's 4 or 5 teams you can always put in that conversation. First time since 2013, Syracuse is back in the Final Four. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I feel pretty good about that prediction. Lacrosse is back. We'll be talking about it. We'll continue to chronicle this basketball team, even in the struggles they are digging themselves into and what is looking like a sub 500 season. So a programming note, by the way, guys, there will not be a Syracuse basketball post-game show on Saturday. The Orange are at Cal. It's going to be another late night. I'm covering lacrosse on Saturday, so I'm going to be off basketball duty. I will say this, though. I'll likely be watching the game. So our Syracuse Sports Insiders, if you guys want to text away as usual, please do. But there's not going to be kind of the formal post-game show and the things that we normally do. So programming note, no post-game show on Saturday night after Syracuse takes on Cal. Wanted to let you guys know that. Again, we're going to be doing this on Thursdays. Would love to get your feedback on what time do you think the show should be. Some things you want us to talk about. Certainly, I flew solo today, but we're going to have guests going forward. We're kind of a work in progress. We're going to feel it out as we go. You guys coming by, your feedback from our Syracuse Sports Insiders. Oh, which, by the way, we have. I should do that before we go. Thank you for reminding myself about that. We had some good comments that I wanted to get to. Woo! Had a brain cramp there. Almost forgot. We had some good stuff from our Syracuse Sports Insiders. Maddie S. says, my thoughts on team identity. That continues to be a hot topic. It's not basketball now. The team seems to follow Autry's sideline demeanor. From what you see on TV, Red looks very passive and overly calm. Doesn't look like he holds any accountability. The team seems to have taken on that demeanor. Seems like he should be a little more animated on the sideline. Look, Autry's not Boeheim. Autry's not Buzz Williams. He's not Jim Calhoun. He's not, man. How about Dan Hurley? My man. Whew. Calm down, buddy. Have about 2 or 3 less Red Bulls before the game starts. So you don't want a coach to be somebody they're not. Could this team use a little more pop and a little more energy and a little more spark from a guy who can't get passionate? I don't disagree with that. Richard says, I think we need to stop looking for this orange standard that doesn't exist. I suggest maybe we start out with more of a tangerine standard because we're about half the team we used to be. Different Richard. Richard B says, I actually woke up not feeling well at midnight to see Syracuse down by 14. So I felt sicker. We just don't have enough shooters to spread the floor. So the offense reverts to kind of schoolyard one-on-one, no cuts, no alley-oops, no moving without the ball, just heroes trying to challenge the likes of Maxime Reynaud and getting their pocket picked. Hope you're feeling better, by the way, Richard. My guy Madden Q says, what are the plans presented by Kent Severud and other parties? Have you thought about if the model of conferences could change, or do you think it's inevitable the ACC gets rated? I don't think it's inevitable they get rated. What we heard today will solidify things going forward. I think even the Greg Sankeys and the Tony Petittis, the commissioner of the SEC and the Big Ten, want to see the ACC survive. The ACC is in a much better position than the Pac-12 was. It's not going to fall in on itself. The worry, though, is when one goes, the other goes, right? Who makes the first move? Clemson and Florida State were trying to do that. North Carolina was observing very carefully, as Virginia was, as Miami is. So for at least till 2031, it looks like they're not going to make any of those moves. Would I be naive to think the ACC is going to be exactly what it is today, or pardon me, 5 years from now than it is today? Maybe it could be better. Maybe they'll get aggressive and bulk up the league and make it a better media entity, and maybe Jim Phillips will get innovative. But I don't think we're going to see like a Pac-12 type thing. Shout out to my guy Madden Cuse. Big pumpkin pie fan. There you go. Like Mel Kiper Jr. Mel Kiper Jr., fun fact, eats pumpkin pie for breakfast every day. That's why you watch this show, to walk away with details like that. That's a true story, by the way. True story. And that sounds delicious. I think I'm going to start doing that. But anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a Syracuse Sports Insider, where you can send me your texts and your opinions and your thoughts anytime. And thanks for watching this edition of Syracuse Sports Live. Now, again, please subscribe to Syracuse Sports on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, so you guys can listen to this on demand when you want. Our Syracuse Sports Insiders will keep them informed on when the live shows will be. I'm not sure what time next week's going to be, probably about the same time. But thanks for being with us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being a Syracuse Sports Insider. We will catch you next time here on Syracuse Sports. You guys have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next time, okay?